You are watching NetSoft IT Academy. 905-812-2923. info@netsoftatacademy.com. www.netsoftatacademy.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beginner's Guide to Azure series. So far, we talked about identity with Entra ID and how Azure subscription helps you organize and secure resources. Today, we are diving into a topic that quietly powers everything behind the scenes. That is Azure Networking. Now, from securing your workloads to enabling communication across regions, or even between two or multiple data centers and the clouds. That is Azure connecting with AWS or connecting with GCP, that is Google Cloud. Everything is done by establishing a perfect network. Here, networking becomes an absolute must, essential in Azure. So let's break it down. So let's start with the big picture here, that why we need networking, why networking matters in Azure environment. Well, every workload you run on Azure, whether it is a virtual machine, a web application, or a database, they all need to securely communicate with each other. In a traditional data center, that might mean plugging in your network cables and configuring routers and switches. But in Azure, everything is virtual, software defined. So here you build these virtual networks or software-defined networks that behave like a physical one. And once you understand how those network works, you gain control over how the traffic will flow, how resources are kept in a secured bubble, and how you connect different parts of your environment together, whether they're in cloud or even if they're on premises. Yes, even a virtual network just behaves like a real network. So if you want to connect your workload on cloud to the real physical workload servers on-prem, you can just connect them. The networking just works one-to-one. Now, the foundation of Azure networking is the virtual networks, or you can call them VNet for short. A VNet is your private, isolated network in Azure. It's your own dedicated section of the cloud. Inside a VNet, which you will create, you define IP address range. That is your range from where you can pick and select IP addresses for your devices. Remember, there are some reserved IP addresses you cannot use. Rest, all the IP addresses can be used for your host allocation. Now, these IP address ranges are also broken into something called subnets. And it controls how different parts of your infrastructure talk to each other. Now, what are subnets? Well, it is in the name, subdivision of a network. Subnet help divide your VNet into smaller, manageable blocks. For example, one of your web server or one of your database might be in two separate subnets, and then you can keep them separate and control the traffic flow between them. This separation improves both organization and security. Now, the next concept was IP addressing, that is your range. Well, when setting up a VNet, you use CIDR notation to define IP address range. Something like the class A, that is 10.0.0.0/16. /16 is your CIDR notation. And you can also use any other range in your environment. But make sure if you are using multiple ranges or you're dividing it into multiple subnets for multiple resources, no IP address range can actually overlap with other IP address. So make sure the IP address ranges are not overlapping. Now that you have your own network, or at least you know how to create one, the next step is to secure it. And here comes the next concept, that is NSG, which stands for Network Security Groups. Well, NSGs are essentially a cloud firewall. It's not the exactly Azure firewall, but it behaves like one. You apply them to subnets or even individual network card or network interface, or in short, NIC, NIC. And they let you control the traffic flow. Like what traffic is allowed via which port. You can control that. For example, you might allow inbound HTTP traffic on port 80, but block the RDP access unless it is coming from your specific corporate IP. Yes, you can also define the source IP address from where the request is originating. So all this can be configured in NSG. The next concept is ASG. That stands for Application Security Groups. ASG makes it easier to manage security by grouping resources based on their role, not just their IP addresses. So instead of writing rules for a specific IP address, you can say, allow traffic from web servers group. And in that group, you can have multiple web servers, right? So this gives you a more manageable approach, especially at scale. So remember, NSG is more rudimentary way to protect your network resources. ASG just gives you more flexibility and manageability. Why? Because it helps you to group the resources together. Now, Azure gives you multiple ways to connect resources, depending on what you are trying to do and what your environment scope is. The first is Intra-VNet communication. This is the simple one here. In this concept, resources inside the same virtual network can talk to each other by default, unless you are restricting the communication with the help of NSG. By default, all the resources in one VNet, they can talk to each other. Next, you can implement VNet to VNet peering. So if you want to connect, let's say, two virtual networks together, maybe in a different region or even in different subscriptions, you can use VNet peering. It's fast because it uses Microsoft's own backbone. It is secure, again, because of the private nature of Microsoft backbone. And it is very simple to implement. Then you can go for hybrid connectivity. Well, for hybrid setup, where you want to connect Azure to your on-premises environment, maybe your headquarters or your office, you've got a couple of options in this section. That is your point-to-site VPN gateway, or you can create a site-to-site VPN gateway. That simply means when you're connecting a virtual private network gateway device from another virtual private gateway device, you're connecting two VPN gateways, that is your site-to-site connection. That can be your Azure to your office. It can be Azure to your environment on AWS even. That will be site-to-site. But when you're connecting a point device, that is your laptop or your smartphone, tablets, to your VPN gateway on Azure, that will become your point-to-site VPN gateway. You can also use this method of connectivity. And then there is one more, that is ExpressRoute. Well, this gives you a private, dedicated connection through a service provider. This is ideal for scenarios where performance and security both are critical, because ExpressRoute gives you higher bandwidth, and it also gives you security with the help of isolation, because it also uses Microsoft backbone on the Microsoft side and leased lines from your office to your ISP, that is Internet Service Provider. Next up, let's discuss how we can connect with Azure services like Azure Storage or SQL, maybe Vault. There are many more services we can connect to. So for this, we have two options. The first one is service endpoints. Well, Service endpoints allow your virtual network to connect to Azure services over Microsoft Backbone network. But remember, the service still uses public IP. So it is secure because of Microsoft's backbone isolation, but not entirely private. That is the end-to-end private network. No, it is not. Then the next option we have is called private endpoints. Well, private endpoints take it to the next step. They assign a private IP from your own virtual network to the Azure service so that the traffic never leaves your private network. It stays within it. So if the traffic stays within your network, well, it will provide you even more security. Well, this is the preferred option in most production environments where you want tight security, private endpoints. But if you don't want this level of security, even the service endpoint will work. Now, every network also needs DNS, the system that translates name into IP addresses and IP addresses to name. Now, Azure provides built-in internal DNS that automatically resolve names for, let's say, your virtual machines or your database servers. So things like vmname.internal.cloudapp.net just works. Yes, I just gave you a long name, but the naming convention depends on your DNS structure and your naming hierarchy. You can also set up a custom DNS server if you want. You can forward DNS queries to your own on-premises server. And for public apps, you can use Azure DNS to host your own domain names and manage things like A record or C names and more. Remember, Azure offers both internal as well as public DNS services. So when you have your network established, you put some NSG to secure the traffic. You also created your own DNS servers. Then you also use private endpoints or service endpoints. Everything is functioning properly. Then down the line, of course, things can go wrong. Or maybe you just want to keep an eye on your environment, how it is actually working. This is where you want monitoring. Azure provides tools like Network Watcher. Yes, there are other monitoring tools to monitor the resource usage, but right now we will focus on network aspect of it. So the tool called Network Watcher, which can capture packets, log traffic flows, and help you trace the issues. This tool is quite important, and there are many sub-services inside Network Watcher, which can be used to pinpoint the issue, and it can also act like a starting point for your troubleshooting journey. There are also connection troubleshooters to check if a virtual machine in one subnet can connect to another, or if the traffic is being blocked by NSG rules. Well, these tools inside your Network Watcher will help you. To give you a sense of what this looks like in practice, here's a quick overview of how you set up your basic Azure network. First, you create a virtual network and define your address space. That can be Class A, Class B, or Class C IP address. Then you create subnets within that virtual network. Next, you can add NSGs with rules to allow or block traffic. For example, you can allow SSH traffic or HTTPS or RDP, or you can even block it. Finally, you associate this NSG with a subnet. And just like that, you have a secure, isolated network ready for your resource. All right, so now let's talk about the backbone of Azure Cloud Network, that is networking. So before we dig deep into the Azure portal and network portion, let's go and check out our Microsoft Data Center infrastructure. As you can see, if I remove all the filters and just select networking, All right, as you can see, the whole world is connected with Microsoft's backbone. Now, all these cables are actual fiber optics running across oceans to connect multiple data centers, and all these blue dots are the network connection point for Microsoft cloud infrastructure. So if I go to this POP, that is point of presence, or go to this one, yeah, this just signify that, hey, at this location there is a point of presence where if you connect it, you can get into the internal network of Azure data centers. So this is Microsoft's backbone. And let's go back to our Azure portal and look how we can create a VNet. So if you go to a virtual network, this is where you can create a VNet. So click on just create. Then you need to select a subscription and a resource group. This is, super critical. In your project, you must have your valid subscription, and there must be at least one resource group in which you will put all your resources. Then you just give a unique name to your network. I'll call it demo VNet. And this should be unique in your environment, in your scope. Now you select in which region you want to create this virtual network. I will select Canada Central, click Next. Here you can actually use encryption. Let's say you want to create VPN tunnels, you can use it. You can also create a subnet for Azure Bastion, a subnet for Azure Firewall, or you can enable DDoS protection. So all these features will provide you security over your network. But these things can be done separately as well. Now, this is critical. This is where you define your address range and your subnet. By default, Azure already gives you class A address space, but you can change it if you want. Let's say I want class C, 168.0.0/16, and my subnet will be called default. If you want to rename it, then you click on edit. You can also rename it, demo subnet. Let's say you want to add more subnets. Well, just click on add a subnet, and you can add the next range. All right, so you just put the name here. It's a demo sub 01 because the name already exists. And here you can actually redefine your size. So if you want, your subnet can be bigger than the previous one. But remember, all the subnets cannot exceed the total range of your address space, which you defined on top. So once you're good with it, just click on add, and a new subnet will be added. Now, if you want to add new network address space, you can also add it over here. Now click next, next, and create. A new network will be created. All right, so you have your network ready. If you go back to your virtual network, here it is. Now, once it is created, again, if you want to add, let's say, more address spaces, you can. And if you want to add more subnets, again, you can add more subnets. You can even delete it. But remember, if a subnet is being used by some systems, you cannot delete it directly. You need to first delete those resources which are connected to the specific subnet. Now, to protect this, you have NSG, Network Security Group. As you can see, no network security group to display because we never created one. Well, you can create one right away. Or if you want to create NSG separately and then attach it, well, that can also be done. For that, just search NSG. Network Security Group. Oh, we are already here. And then click on Create. All right, select your resource group and give your NSG a name. Click tags, click next, and create. Done. Remember, you just created the NSG, but it will not do anything because it is not configured. Plus, it is also not assigned to a specific, let's say, network card or subnet. So first you create it, then you should configure it properly, and then you assign it to the proper resource. So once it is created, you go to resource, then you just go to settings, add your inbound rule, add your outbound rule, and then you apply it over a network interface, that is your network card, NIC, or you can also apply it on the subnet. So if I say NIC, you should see nothing there because I don't have any machines in my environment. If I click subnets, then you should see those two subnets you created. And then once it is applied, configured, then it will start protecting your environment. It will open a specific port which you defined, and all the other ports will be closed. And similarly, if you type your ASG, Application Security Group, well, for ASG as well, the fundamental logic is same. You first create one, then you configure, and then you have to assign it. So you create one, then you configure it, and then you assign it at the proper location. So let's go to resource. All right, so my demo ASG is now ready. All right, so now you have your ASG ready. So in future, when you will create your, let's say, virtual machine, and the virtual machine will have a network card, and that network card will be associated to NSG, and you will configure your rules there. At that time, you will also associate that thing, not that thing, that your virtual machine with the ASG. And all the virtual machine who are sharing their source from a particular ASG will follow it. Now, the next point is how will you connect two virtual networks? Because if all your virtual machines are in one network, they will talk to each other without any issues. But what if there are two networks? So let me quickly create another network, demo VNet 02. Again, class A is fine. One point to remember, in my first network, I selected class C, 192.168, and this one is 10.0.0. That is important. When you want to connect two networks, you have to make sure the IP address range is not overlapping. All right, so just created. Now, when you want to connect them, you just go to one of the network, then under settings, you search for peering. This is where you will create your peering connection between two networks. So you click on it, just add your link name. Again, the name need not to be a specific one. It is just for the naming convention. So I will just say, for example, VNet 02 connected to VNet 01, just to describe it. Then you select your another virtual network. That is my demo VNet. No, that is demo VNet 2, because I'm already in demo VNet. Then in the same place, you will also name the opposite link, the reverse link. This will be demo VNet 01 to demo VNet 02. Click on add. And then two connections will be created. All right, the first link is done. Second link will also take maybe like 10 seconds. And once both links are created, you will see that it will say fully synchronized and peering is connected. And you will see this connection in the other VNet as well. If you go to peering, here. So now if there are two machines in both networks, they can talk to each other. You can also create your VPN connection between two sites, or maybe a point to site, or maybe an ExpressRoute. But for that, you have to create a gateway, a virtual network gateway. Now, when you want this virtual network gateway to connect with your network, first, in your network where you want to connect this gateway, you have to create a separate subnet. So you go to your network, go to Subnets, and then click on Add Subnet, and purpose will be Virtual Network Gateway. You basically select that. Click on Add. Now, once this is created, you can search for VNG, Virtual Network Gateway. And this is where you click on Create and just follow the prompt to create a gateway, and then in the future you can establish a connection. Now, this gateway will take some time to create. It can take anywhere about 20 to 40 minutes. But the basic steps are: you select your subscription, you give your gateway a name, so demo VNG01 region. Now, what do you want to create this gateway for? VPN or ExpressRoute, you select that. Then you select the SKU, like how powerful you want your gateway to be. I will select the cheapest one here for this demo, VPN Gateway 1. Now, you can always change your SKU, but remember, you can only change within a specific version. So if you are 2, you can only jump to a new version of the second generation. It must be in the same generation. Okay, then you select a virtual network where you already have your subnet created. As you can see, it already fetched the right subnet. Then your VNG also need a front-end IP address for ingress and egress of your traffic. You select one. Now, if you want higher fault tolerance, you can create 2 connection points. If you don't want it, you can just say, I don't want active mode, and disable it. In this case, only one IP address will be enough. And then you create your VNG. So this is where you establish your VPN as well as ExpressRoute connections. Now, when it comes to endpoints, again, go to Network and click on Private Links. So both your service endpoint and your private endpoints create a private connection. It's just a scope which is different. In private endpoints, you basically give your subservice a private IP address. So there is no need for any traffic to go to public domain. It all stays in private network. But in service endpoint, well, the Azure service at least route through the public IP addresses. It is still secure because it uses Microsoft's own backbone. So it gives you protection with the help of isolation, but not encryption. So this is where you create your private endpoints. You basically click on Create, and then it will ask you for the prompts. So first thing is basic, that is project detail. You select your subscription, your resource group, you give it a name, demo, private endpoint, let's say. Then you select, give your network card a name. Remember, a new network interface will be created for the subservice. All right, so next it will ask you for the resource. Like, where is your subservice? Like, what do you want to connect? So I can say it is in my Azure, resource group is, or resource type is, let's say, storage. There are so many resource types. So let's say if you want to connect to a specific container or file share in your storage, then you will select Microsoft Storage, storage account. Then you select your storage account. Right now there is no storage account. That is why this field is empty, but you select your storage account if you have one. Then you select what other you want to connect to a container, file share, queue, table, whatever subservice you want to connect, you select that. Then you move to the next option, that is virtual network. This is where you select the virtual network where your machines are, who wants to connect to the storage.
Once you do that, then you just create this private endpoint, and the machines can now privately connect with this resource you configured. Now, how about service endpoint? Well, you can search for service endpoint policy. So before you create a service endpoint, you need to create a service endpoint policy. Service endpoint policy is nothing. It just defines, again, the source and the destination. So I will just name it demo service endpoint. Let it refresh this. So let's select this. Here you go. So, resource. If you click on add a resource, again the same logic. Here you will select your service. Then, is it just a single account, or maybe all accounts in your subscription, or all accounts in your resource group? You can select your scope. Then you select your resource group in which you have your storage account. Then here you select your storage account. And that's it, you just add it. So the whole storage account as a service is actually added. You cannot pinpoint or you cannot select a sub-service, like I want to connect to a table, queue. You cannot do it here. Service endpoints connect you privately with the whole service. And whenever you create a virtual network, one more thing, you will see that a new resource group is always created. So if you go to resource group, here, Network Watcher Resource Group. Now here you will get Network Watcher. So what is Network Watcher? Well, Network Watcher, if you search for it, Network Watcher is actually a service with multiple tools inside it to keep an eye over your network performance, or it is used to troubleshoot some issues in your network infrastructure. Here you can see all the topology, means how your network looks like. In my case, topology is very simple. I just have two networks in central Canada, which is also connected with peering. Then you have connection monitor. When it is configured, it will keep a check on the connection, and if the connection is down, it can send you the alert. Then you have IP flow verify, where you can check if the traffic can pass from one point to other. Then NSG diagnostics, which will give you all the rules you configured. Next hop will tell you like what is the next junction where your traffic will go in order to reach to the destination. So let's say in your house, when you want to go to YouTube, your immediate next hop is not YouTube. Your device's immediate next hop is your router. So you can see that here. Then you can also see effective security rules, which will give you all the NSG rules. Then VPN troubleshooting, packet capture, just like Wireshark, you can also capture packets here. You can also keep a check on your usage and quota, and you can also see the historical data, that is log. So this is your network watcher. Now remember, you should practice with virtual network. You should create few virtual networks, try to connect them, deploy some virtual machine inside it, and test it.
Let's quickly recap what we covered. The first thing we covered was virtual networks that are the building blocks of Azure networking. Then we discussed subnets, NSG, and ASG that helps you to organize and secure your resources in Azure ecosystem. You can also connect with services across regions or even to on-premises environment using peering for Azure environment, VPN for more universal connection, or ExpressRoute if you want a dedicated connection to your headquarters or your office. Then we discussed private endpoints, which provide secure access to Azure services. And also, we discussed some monitoring tools like Network Watcher, which helps you to monitor and troubleshoot network issues. In the next video, we will take everything we covered so far and apply it into the deployment of Azure virtual machines, including networking, access, and security setup. If you are learning something new from this video, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. And drop your question in the comment section. See you in the next one. Take care.
Thank you for watching NetSoft IT Academy. 905-812-2923. Info@netsoftatacademy.com. www.netsoftatacademy.com.